All right, and then what I'd like to do is just share the screen and then have you look at what we have here on Canvas. And again, because there are people that ask some good questions, it's sometimes worthwhile to continue to log on. But I understand if you were here yesterday, then a lot of the material that I'm bringing up will be similar to that. So just in a way, be aware of that. Okay. Well, let's see here. There we go. Share screen. Yeah. All right. So just inform me of, excuse me, what you're seeing. Is everyone able to see then the main page of Canvas for our class?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great, super. That's what I wanted to see. Wanted to let you know. So again, let's just kind of look over what we have here. So you should be, by this time, here we are in the third day of the class, which is like the third week. It really moves fast. And so, you know, think about if you've been in a class in the fall or the spring, you can think about, well, in the third week, what might be due, right? So you can think about material that's starting to become due in a regular semester that might be 16 weeks long. So here we are in our third day, how we could start to have material that's due. So if you go here to, after you've read through the syllabus, start looking over the chapters. And again, if you can read one chapter a day, that's really a good place to be. If you can get a physical copy of the book, again, the book, I know this is showing, kind of looks, it is backwards there for us, but it's the 12th edition, We the People. Main author, it's named Ginsberg, and it's from W.W. Norton. You have that material on the syllabus, and so, which also includes the ISBN. That's a number that you can use to order the text from some other source than the INEO bookstore if you'd like to go. Now, some of you are perhaps using ebook, using something on Red Shelf, and that's perfectly fine. But again, the page numbers may not necessarily always coincide, so just be aware of that. But should be reading the text now, looking over notes, getting ready for your news reviews and your discussions. So once you've then looked over that syllabus, you can see over here modules. And on modules we have a lot of information here, some that might be somewhat overwhelming, but just spend some time kind of looking it over. For example, we have chapter outlines, and those can be really helpful. We have PowerPoints. So just be aware that in some ways the PowerPoints, they're for a face-to-face class. So some of the issues and descriptions may not always translate that well. And there could be some references to particular due dates, since it is from a past semester, that may not work for us in every setting. So just be aware of that. There's still useful, good information there. And actually, I need to change this comparative report. That's not something that we really need to look at here. So I'm going to, while we're just talking about, put that off there. And then here we have lecture recordings, and that can be very useful if you're, especially if you want to listen to, you're more of a visual person or an audio person in that sense, and so then you'll have that a way to look over there on the lecture recordings. And then some study notes and PowerPoints again. And so here's what's been added on. So recorded Zoom meeting. So that's what I added on from yesterday that we had that meeting. And so you might want to just spend some time looking it over and seeing what kind of points were being made in the meeting. And so we've had so far 8 of the chapters. Actually, there's been 9, so I'll have to track down what happened to the 9th one there, add that on there, that we have for our points to ponder. So I'll get that added on there as well for you. And then even some very recent lectures from 2019 that you can use there. So it's actually perhaps even a little bit over the top, the amount of material that's there, but you can go to some of that material and help you prepare for our exams and our quizzes. Our quiz is coming up again. Remember, that's fill in the blank. So just think about then how to best, there's only going to be 4 of those. And the first one comes from the first 4 chapters. It'll be worth 25 points. So you'll have 25 different terms or definitions that you'll fill in the blank with. And it'll come from those first 4 chapters. So really be thinking over those chapters, reading over those chapters. And you'll have 25 minutes on that. So that will break down to 1 minute per question. So some of this material can help you with that. They can also help you with certainly the midterm exams. And we have one of those coming up here too. And those are multiple choice questions. So that's where a lot of these lecture notes can really help you for that. Okay, let me see if we got any questions there about that material. So that's the way to use the modules. And now let's look at I think 2 areas that you ought to be, in terms of assignments, that you ought to be dealing with right now, really focusing on. And that would be the discussions, and then also the news reviews. So let's just kind of look at discussions here. And seeing, very good, we've got some people that are getting started on that, working on it. Let's see here if we can move that over a little bit. So on the discussions, other than the first one, and way to go, Malachi, getting on that. Here we can see that I give you as some examples. I set the tone by the question relating to particular terms, and then you reply to that, and that's how we get the discussions going. Good way to learn from one another, different points of view that are being brought out there. But if you notice, that was just the first one, and that's the one that I set the table with the questions. But from that, we also then see the involvement for the discussion leaders. So topic 2 wanted people who are discussion leaders to put the questions together on the amendment process. This comes from chapter 2. And you'll see here in these pages, it's a pretty difficult process to make an amendment to the U.S. Constitution. And anyone come across, again, this is in chapter 2, but anyone like to share just in your own words what you would think the term amendment means, what you believe it means?
I think they kind of describe it in the book as a way to adjust something, like the way they described it was when they first started coming out with things, it was for their problems then, but they made it to where you could adjust things to problems for nowadays.
Very good. So there is adjustment there, and you're right. There it is an adjustment to some verbal contract or verbal agreement or written agreement. Excuse me. So a good way of looking at it there, Brett. And yeah, so this is going to be a change, and specifically in this area in the Constitution. So when we think of the amendment, especially here in the context of American government, then we're looking at an amendment to the U.S. Constitution. So we have 27 amendments. I mean, when you consider over 200 years using the same Constitution, lots of different processes of trying to get something amended, some other kind of language amended to the Constitution, but that's only happened 227 times. So that tells us that it's a pretty difficult process. So really would like for people to then write about that process as the discussion leaders. And as always, if you want to know if you're a discussion leader or what group you're in, I generally will have handouts here with you. I've already provided this link in some other situations, but here you'll see that link. You just click on that, and there you go. You'll find out for what discussion topic you are the discussion leader, and hit the wrong button there. So let's go back. There we go. So that can be useful to you there, just as a reminder. So when you are participating in the discussions, get a sense of what team you're in, what group you're in, and then find out who is the discussion leader for that particular topic. When you see that person posting the questions, then you would click on reply to that question, and that's how you provide your responses. So certainly just read through the question and provide your responses. That's the way for an online class to have group discussions. And as I mentioned before, it is a really good way to learn from one another. If you'd like, you can certainly read through a discussion and say, well, I read something online that makes some interesting points about this issue, and I'm going to share that link with you in your discussion. Feel free to do that. And that, again, just kind of extending our discussions and our knowledge base about a particular topic. So that's always helpful too. Okay, any questions there about discussions?
I have one on the discussions part.
Sure.
With the blue group and whatnot, at least I haven't seen them, and I apologize if they've been here and I just haven't. But one of our members I haven't seen him yet. So with his discussion questions, should we just divvy those up, or like how should we take those?
Yeah, let's just, that's always a really good question, Brett, and that can happen. You just have a group member that doesn't, and I understand there is one person in the class that hasn't really logged on at all. And so don't really know what the situation may be with that student. So if that happens and you have a case where a student was supposed to be the discussion leader on a question and just doesn't participate, you feel free to just go ahead and respond to another group's discussion. That'll be fine. You can go ahead and just hit reply and participate. We'd like for you to perhaps wait a couple of days, and so because we have this available for the whole week. So if that's the situation, you could wait till, you know, maybe by the end of today, let's say. So that's giving people roughly 3 days to really participate. And if they haven't really done anything by then you can go ahead and just join some other group. But more than anything else, what Brett's raising there is a really good point. Don't let that get to a point where you cause yourself to not participate, because I want you to participate in the groups. Would like for you to participate in your group's discussion. But if that doesn't necessarily work out, then just go ahead and participate in another group. And the main thing above everything else is that you continue to participate. So that's what I'd like for you to do.
Okay, I have another one then. On the quizzes and tests, you said that the first set of quizzes will be chapters 1 through 4, but on the test it's 1 through 5.
Right.
So
yeah.
is 5 going to be another group then for the quizzes, or is there just not a quiz for 5?
Yeah, the reason for that, and that's a really good observation, and I was going to bring that out as well. And the only reason for doing that is that there's 15 chapters that I believe we really need to cover in the text. And so we're going to cover 15 chapters. But to break down the points, we ended up with 4 quizzes. So there are 25 points each. But in our midterm test, we only have 3 tests. So the test then can cover 5 chapters. And the quizzes only cover, because of the way they break it down, 4. So there's a little bit of it's a little bit disjointed in terms of its coordination between the quizzes and the test. And so it is important to just keep that in mind in that case. So the quizzes overall, which is really a way of being familiar with the terms in your text, because that's all that the quizzes deal with. But the tests deal with multiple choice questions that go beyond the terms. So they may be from lecture notes, they may be from a particular court case or some individual in the text as well. So that's the only reason why I did that. And so don't let that confuse you. I understand that it is a little bit off center, but so you're right, absolutely. There are 4 chapters that are being covered in most of the quizzes. One of those quizzes, I believe, only covers, obviously, would only cover 3. And then each one of the midterm tests would cover 5 chapters.
Okay, then my last one is could you explain a little bit more on the big group project one, where I believe it says that we're supposed to be getting the opinions of other people in our group or whatnot on our topic?
Yeah, very good. I'm glad you brought that up. I think you'll find this to be very interesting. So group discussion project. And this is where you can see it's due on July the 13th. And really, this is just a case where you go into more detail about the discussions within your group, and you do write a report about those discussions. So this is starting to be the time in which you start to think about that. Everything moves so fast in a month-long class. So again, I just keep bringing that up, I know, but it's important to keep that in mind. So July 2nd through the 5th, that's a time where you start to share your ideas with your group members. Would like for you to then eventually bring in an article that you have an attached.
Sir, I don't think the Zoom, if you click the link or whatnot, it's not keeping up with the screen.
Okay, so this is what are you seeing on the screen right now, Brett?
It just says the group discussion project report with the review handout. I don't know if you clicked that handout or not.
Yeah, I did click on the handout. So it's not
showing it.
Shoot.
I think it's just we have to adjust your screen, possibly, like the share.
Yeah, let's see what we can do here. Let's see if we can get this to work. Okay. Okay, what do you see now?
It's went to the Word project now.
Okay, great. Very good. Thanks for bringing that up. And I want all of you to be like that. If there's something you're not seeing, be sure and just share it with me. Let me know, because we're kind of working through this. This is a lot of new stuff here with Canvas for sure, and Zoom. So, okay, so on the handout, and you can click on that handout when you're looking over this material. And again, so I think that you can go back to the project and see about the requirements. So just to make some distinctions here, there is a discussion part where you're sharing with your group members, the same group members that you have in the other discussions. And then there's a report, and you're writing about those discussions. And you're writing about, so you can, in a way, think about, what did Sheena have to say about this project? What did Colton have to say about it, right? And did their opinions change? Were they different? Was Colton's opinion quite different than Sheena's? Those kinds of things. Those are the observations that you're writing. And actually, I have to correct myself on there. I need to update this report. It's worth 50 points. So keep that in mind as you're looking over this report. So that's really where the analysis comes in. You're going to write about your group members and the differences of opinions, and did those opinions evolve over time? And of course, there's not a whole lot of time for the opinion to evolve here, but that can still happen. Maybe people are persuaded by other people's points of view and analysis and research. It can come in. But really, the first step is to think about your topic. So we have 3 groups, and they're related to issues in the text. So if you're in the red group, you're going to be writing about, is democracy always the best form of government? Or are there times in which another form should be used? So that's what you're sharing. So, and there's not a discussion leader, so you would just jump in and share with your group members and just kind of say, hi, I'm Colton, and this is how I feel about democracy, if you're in that group there. And maybe there are times in which it doesn't necessarily work. I mean, aren't we in a time right now where this is really interesting to, we think about democracy and expression and individual expression, but we're living in a time of a pandemic. Is there a time in which individual expression needs to be limited? And so we're not really faced with that here in Oklahoma, but maybe we should be. Maybe it will happen. Is there a case where the government can go in and say, when you're outside, you need to be wearing a mask, and if not, you'll pay a fine? And if someone goes, well, I don't feel like wearing a mask, so, well, we don't really care about your feelings, right? So your individual expression is limited. Are there times in which it needs to be? And even to the point of democracy itself, we had an election in Oklahoma yesterday, and do we ever get to a point where we go, we just need to suspend them? There's not a good use of elections anymore, and the people don't know what they're doing here, and we need to turn it over to another group. That seems to be a very radical step, but is there ever a time in which that radical step would be necessary? So really interesting topic. And maybe if you want to, you can share some thoughts on that here in a little bit, but I'll just go on to the other 2 groups, devolution. And this is perhaps a little more of a specific topic, and it comes from chapter 3 in your text. And you're looking at the issue of federalism. So this is a situation where you're considering that the federal government is not in charge of particular programs, but instead you would send it back to a state and local government. And I think this is always a really interesting topic here, because you hear this a lot. Well, the people closest to the problem would know best how to solve it. People in a local government would know best. Well, do they? I mean, is that really true? Would they know more? And so devolution would argue that that's the case. But that's for, if you're in the blue group, you have to consider, again, you ought to read through these pages first and then share your thoughts. Is that where's the right way to go? And then the third one for the green group deals with the standards of sexual harassment and sex discrimination. So that's a pretty specific one as well on pages 183, 184. You know, where do you come up with a real good way to describe that? And this is where your research can be really helpful if you're in the green group, because you need to kind of get a sense of, you know, how do you define it, right? And how do you define the effects of sexual harassment, where someone could be able to successfully sue and say that you've created an environment that prevents an individual from doing his or her job. And so that's a way of looking at that particular topic. So I'm glad you brought that up, Brett, and that's the three topics. So again, your first step, perhaps in the next day or so, you ought to spend some time just kind of looking over which group you're in and looking at that particular topic. But I talked a lot about that. Let's just see if there's any particular questions there about that.
For the discussion part, which between the group here, is there a spot on the Canvas site that we can talk, or are we supposed to shoot like emails between each other type of deal?
Oh, very good. And there should be. Let's see here. So right here, this is it. So just review the handout. It seems a little vague in a case, but really what I would suggest is you read it right here and just click on reply. You click on reply right here, and then you would just say, I'm in this group, this is my topic, and this is my thoughts about it. And the other people should remember what group they're in. And then, because you're in the same group that you're in with your other discussions. And so just from this thread here is where you would share your thoughts.
Okay.
Any other questions there? Well, okay. Any other questions about the class in general? Again, let me just strongly emphasize that certainly more than a regular semester class, it becomes incumbent that every day you wake up, approach the class and go, all right, what time do I devote to the class today? What are my specific goals that I need to accomplish today? And so again, news reviews and discussions, I think would be two really good areas, and the bonuses, good areas there to really focus on. So while I brought that up, let's go ahead and look at both of those here real quickly. So this is under assignments. And here you have the bonuses. So again, you have the picture bonus and the pretest essay, have both of those up. And you can think about if you'd like to do those. Those are just bonuses. And here we have the news reviews. So again, on the news reviews, this is the material, the format that I'd like for you to follow. And as you can see there, you put down your title and chapter, page, and term. A term can be a definition, a person, or a court case. And you can use, you have different sources there. Again, I have some recommended sources. You don't have to use one of those, but they're available for you to look over. And then you can put down the article and the title of that article, and then a 2 to 3 sentence description of that. As we discussed yesterday, I think you don't necessarily have to follow this route, but I think what can be helpful is to identify a title that has the term that you're wanting to use in the title. So some of those things work better than others, but for example, from chapter 1, if you were to write about oligarchy, if you could find a chapter, or if you could find a source that had an article in which the title mentioned oligarchy, the government by a small group of people, then that's a great way to go. It doesn't necessarily always work out that way, but a lot of times it does. And I would suggest that you might want to look it over that way. It may take a little more time to find it, but once you do, I think it's more efficient that way. And this is just a way of relating the topic to current events. So probably would be a good idea in the next day or so, or today, start working on those news reviews. So just to remind you, go to announcements. And here we have news sources. And the news sources are listed here. And I would think that you probably would like to click on some of these news sources just to stay informed about events. So beyond just working on the news reviews, you could just click on one of these and spend a few minutes saying, what are the big stories of the day? And the more you do that, the more you're going to, I think, enjoy American government, and it's going to relate more to your life, and you're going to, I think, do better in the class as a result. So you could just click on Politico and find out what are some of the stories here that are being brought out. It is kind of interesting. Yesterday when we were doing this, some of you were in the class, and we clicked it on, and Oklahoma was the main story. So about the elections coming up here. Doesn't seem like they have anything mentioned about that here that I can't see. But so this is a really good source and can be really helpful to you to find information. Again, not only for the news reviews, but just to find out what's happening in the world. Okay. So any questions there about the news reviews or the discussions? Probably, again, 2 of our main goals that we ought to be working on right now. Well, very good.
I'm sorry.
No problem, Brett. Go for it.
On the discussions, can instead of going to another group, can we just go ahead and make our own questions again on that?
Yeah, that'd be fine if you want to do that.
I'll just make sure that's all right.
Again, I would wait a day or so to see if anyone in if your specific discussion leader doesn't do anything, then you can go ahead and do that.
Okay. All right.
Good question. Anything else there? Okay, great. Well, very good. As always, if you've got some questions, feel free to contact me. Again, this is going to be primarily self-directed with what we see here on Canvas. So if you got some questions about Canvas, certainly contact me about that as well. Okay, we'll stop there. We'll be open for tomorrow at 9:30, And then certainly we'll devote more focus on week 2, starting on July 7th of next week, because we will be off on Monday, July 6th. So perhaps if you're available tomorrow, I'll see you tomorrow. In the meantime, just take care. Bye.
Have a good day.
Thank you. You too, Sheena.